Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome, you're in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. It's Wednesday, and the NFL has done some drastic changes to the league. And can't say that I agree with all of them, but maybe I don't know what's best for the league. You know, I'm a guy that's been watching this league since I was wee high. I've been watching football since I was 3 years old. And they always make changes to the game, and sometimes they meet backlash initially. And as the years go by, you start to rebel less and less until finally it's silent and there is no backlash, and you've come accustomed to seeing these rules in place. And that's probably what's going to happen with this new crown of the head rule for running backs or ball carriers in general. And they basically made this rule because of Trent Richardson. And this is a guy that takes the football as he's running with it, takes his helmet, puts it down, and actually, the most indelible image of this exact rule would be Earl Campbell. I don't know if you ever remember Earl Campbell running the football or not, but he has a particular run where he literally sticks his head into the chest of a defender and just bull rushes him, runs him slam over, and keeps on going. And that's exactly what this rule is supposed to stop from happening. That's the type of contact that this rule is supposed to eliminate. Now, how often does that happen in the National Football League? Not often. I mean, the only clips I've seen of this rule in action is Trent Richardson. And I can't think of many players who deliberately take their head and run it into a defender. It's not often that a player is going to do that. So if that's how they're going to call it, then I don't have a problem with it. Because you won't be throwing flags for this, and this won't be interrupting the game and giving away a 15-yard penalty on plays that probably don't need to have a penalty called on. So if that's what is going to be called on, fine. But if you're going to start making judgment calls, and every time a running back or a receiver, it kind of curls up to protect himself from a tackler or defender, and maybe the helmet's touched, maybe the helmet is lowered into a shoulder or something, and you throw the flag, that's when I have a problem. Now you're interrupting the game. Now you're not allowing the football players to do what they're being paid to do, and that's play football. Now all of a sudden the game isn't the same as it used to be. And so that's all I'm trying to make sure, that we keep the integrity of the game intact. And look, football players know what they're signing up for when they play, and I'm all about safety. I'm not going to sit here and try to act like, because I'm not playing and I'm not the one out there putting my body on the line, that I don't care about safety. I want this game to be as safe as possible, but at the end of the day, there's going to be risk involved. And the guys who suit up, the guys who sign those contracts, they know exactly what they're getting themselves into. And so it's a physical game. It's a violent game. It's always going to be that way. You can't legislate the violence out of this game. You can make it as safe as possible, and that's what this rule is trying to do. But at the same time, you don't want to take the essence of the game away by trying to legislate certain things out of it that, frankly, you can't do it. It's an involuntary reaction. The human body does it on its own. If someone's running at you, your first reaction is to clinch up, okay? Is to protect yourself, especially when you're playing football. Your body is trained to make sure that you brace yourself for impact. And that means lowering your pad level. And when you lower your pad level, guess what else lowers? Itself. Your head. And so I don't know how this rule is going to be called. And that's the key here. How objective are these officials supposed to be with this thing? How flag happy are they going to be? Because if they allow the players to play, and this rule isn't really called that often, then so be it. This rule isn't a big issue. But if this flag is thrown once every game for every week of the season, then I have a problem with it. Because you can't throw this flag. And what I was hearing was that the committee took a look at every game over the last 2 weeks of the season in the regular season. So we're talking about week 16, week 17. They watched all the games, and they said that this penalty would have only have been called 3 times. So if that's the case, fine. I can live with that. But if the officials are going to have their hands on the flag and a guy lowers his head, lowers his shoulder, and the head makes contact with the defender, and they pull out the flag, I got a problem with that. And I think the NFL is really going to suffer because of it. And look, I say it's going to suffer, yet we're going to still watch. They're not going to lose any viewers. They won't lose any sleep over people complaining about it. I thought that this rule wasn't going to pass because I thought the backlash from players around the league and other people involved were going to kind of scare them away. This vote was 31-1 in favor of passing this. And the only franchise to not be on board with this was the Cincinnati Bengals. So everyone in the league essentially feels like this is a very good rule. And so I guess this is what is best for the league. And so, again, if the way that they interpret it is the way that they call it, I have no problems with it because this won't be called that often because there's not a lot of guys around the league that are going to purposely take their head and use it to shield off a defender. That's not how it works 98% of the time. So if that's the case, fine. But if every single time a ball carrier dips his head down to protect himself, the flag comes out, then I have an issue, then it's a problem, then I can see them having to come back and make alterations to this rule. But that was one rule passed by the committee. Another rule passed by the committee, the Jim Schwartz rule. And this is the challenge flag rule. And here's the new stipulation with the challenge flag now. You can throw the challenge flag like you have been doing in the past. If it's legally thrown, same rules apply. You win the challenge, you're not charged a timeout, you keep your challenge. You lose the challenge, you're charged a timeout, and you lose a challenge. So those same rules apply. Here's where it changes. If you illegally throw the flag, and of course, throwing the flag illegally only happens when a play is going to be reviewed already and you don't need to throw the challenge flag, like Jim Schwartz did. When a play is under review, and remember, every turnover, when the ball changes possession, every touchdown, every scoring play is under review, is subject to review. So you don't need to challenge those. So if you pull out the flag and you throw it and you're caught, because remember, Mike McCarthy threw the flag last year, but Jordy Nelson was smart enough to go pick it up off the field and take it off the field before the officials saw it. Not only will you be charged a timeout, whether you win the challenge or not, you'll be charged a timeout because you threw the flag illegally. If you don't have any timeouts, you'll be docked 15 yards. So that's the new rule now. It'll still be challenged, whether you throw it illegally or not. That's not going to stop them from taking a look because at the end of the day, replay is supposed to get it right. And it's not supposed to penalize a team for doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. It's supposed to make sure that the call on the field was the right call. And so that's what this rule and the alteration to it is supposed to do. It's supposed to make this rule make sure that whatever occurs on the field is the right call. Not like in that Detroit Lions-Houston Texans game where Jim Schwartz threw the flag. Everyone knew that this was a bad call. The officials knew it was a bad call, but could not go back and change it because Jim Schwartz broke the rules and threw the flag, which made that play unchallengeable. That's no longer the case. You throw the flag when you're not supposed to, you're going to be penalized via timeout or 15 yards. The play will still be under review, and the right call will be made on the field. So that's the new rule, and I figured that would happen after Jim Schwartz really cost his team a game, and that rule was really a rule that didn't make much sense when it was enacted, and so here we go, righting a wrong. And I think that's a great move by the NFL Rules Committee. And now, lastly, they got rid of the tuck rule. And if you're an Oakland Raiders fan, you're saying to yourself, 12 years too late. This rule should have been gone when we hit Tom Brady and should have been going on to the Super Bowl. So for the Raiders fans, this rule being scrapped, it's about 12 years too late. But for everyone else, no more tuck rule. You hit a quarterback, he fumbles the ball, there's no excuse now, you fumble. Unless the arm is going forward, of course, that still stands. If the arm is going forward and the ball goes forward, incomplete pass. If the ball is fumbled and you're coming back to your body, you're not bailed out anymore. It's a fumble, and if you don't recover it, it's the other team's ball. So I like that call because I hate having to differentiate between is it a fumble, is it not a fumble, was it the tuck rule, was it not the tuck rule. Look, it's really simple. Is your arm going forward or not? If your arm's not going forward, then it should be a fumble. Simple as that. End of discussion. Case closed. That's what this is basically going to do now. It's making it a lot easier on officials to make the right call. No longer do we have to worry about, hey, that's a tuck rule. That's a classic example of the tuck rule right there. No, it's a fumble. Possession has been changed. Let's move on. And so glad to see that being enacted and glad to see that the tuck rule is no more. So let's get on to some news around the league quickly and then we'll get out of here. I want to start with Devin Hester. The Bears and Mark Tresman have notified Devin Hester that, hey, your days of playing wide receiver, done. And I love it. Absolutely love it. And I thought that it was okay to keep him on offense, but just let him know, look, man, your role on this team, your primary role, returning kickoffs, returning punts. You're a specialist. You want to make it to the Hall of Fame? You were once the most dominant force on special teams in the National Football League. By far, no one was even close. You went from the most dynamic and explosive return guy in the league, and maybe in league history, to just an afterthought because you wanted to play wide receiver. Someone told you were a receiver first and that special teams was secondary, and you treated it as such, and your production went way down. It plummeted. Now Mark Tresman has come in and said, look, we got enough receivers. You don't even need to worry about that. Just concentrate on what once made you one of the most dangerous and electrifying players in the National Football League. Just concentrate on the one thing that can land you in the Hall of Fame. Just concentrate on special teams. I'll help you do that by telling you you're no longer a receiver. Simple enough for me. Devin Hester has agreed, and that's all I wanted from the start was for someone to get in his ear, and I said this on the Chicago Bears lab follow-up. Someone needed to get into Devin Hester's ear and tell him, look, man, you're not a receiver. At least not first and foremost. That job and distinction goes to you being a specialist on kickoffs and punt returns. Be the best you can be at that. That's what you were made to do in the National Football League. So do it. Mark Tresman told him he's going to be doing that, and I think that's the best thing that could have happened for Devin Hester and the Chicago Bears. So as free agency continues to progress, and again, we're getting into the latter stages of free agency now. You look at some guys that have changed teams, and quietly some guys are making moves around the league and switching teams. And so want to catch you up to speed on a few moves that I thought caught my eye and thought that were very significant. They may seem insignificant on the surface, but I think that they have the potential to really change the game for some of these teams. You look at a guy like Abreu Franklin coming from San Diego, going to Indianapolis. Again, here the Colts go looking to bolster their front line on that defense. Abreu Franklin is a big defensive tackle, a guy that you want in the middle of your defense. Yeah, he's not going to be as athletic as he once was, and he's not going to be that big, immovable object, that big, immovable force in the middle of your defense like he once was when he was with the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, he's up there in age now. He's not the same guy. But he is still a very, very good defensive tackle and a guy that can help you in a 3-4 defense, especially if you're just starting out like the Indianapolis Colts are. They're going into their second season playing the 3-4 defense. And this is one of those guys that can help you along in that process. Abreu Franklin comes over from San Diego. He's going to be right in the middle of this defense. He's a guy that can be a rotational depth guy. You can start him at defensive tackle. Either way, he's going to produce for you. Here is another move in a long list of moves that have been extremely solid for the Indianapolis Colts in this offseason and free agency. Love what the Colts are doing. And here's another example of the Colts getting it, knowing what they have to do. This is not a part of the puzzle that's going to cost you a lot of money, yet it's a very key part of what you're trying to do on defense. Abreu Franklin, now an Indianapolis Colt. You look at another move that happened, and look, who says kickers are always insignificant? Again, when kickers are doing their job, sometimes they don't get the credit that they deserve. Yet, when they miss a field goal, and it was a game winner or it was a field goal to send it to overtime, oh, you're going to hear about it. And so, here's a guy that has quietly put together one heck of a career in Phil Dawson, was trapped in Cleveland for a long time, and they call him Phil the Boot because he just simply can kick the football. He's getting up there in age, and it doesn't matter. Phil Dawson is still kicking it at an extremely high level. And so he was franchised 2 seasons in a row. Can you believe that? Yes, the Cleveland Browns used their franchise tag on Phil Dawson because when you're a bad football team and you find it hard to score points, the one guy you can count on, believe it or not, is your field goal kicker. And Phil Dawson was that guy for the Cleveland Browns. And now look, the San Francisco 49ers ran into some issues kicking the football through the uprights last season. David Akers, a guy that was a world beater for them 2 seasons ago, last year could not hit the broadside of a barn at times. And so the 49ers, they need a field goal kicker. And when you're playing at such a high level like the 49ers are, making it to the Super Bowl, making it to the NFC Championship game the year before, you want a guy that you can rely on. You want to make sure you don't lose football games because you can't make field goals. And so how do you eliminate that problem? You get one of the best field goal kickers, one of the most consistent field goal kickers in the game, in Phil Dawson. You sign him up to a 1-year deal, and you see how it goes. And so Phil Dawson has found a new home, and that might be the missing link, the last piece for the San Francisco 49ers. Who knows? Maybe it's not. But I tell you one thing, they will not lose games this season or be in jeopardy of losing games because they can't make field goals. Won't have that problem with Phil Dawson on your roster. So now you look at another team that's looking to bolster their roster. The Dolphins have done a lot of things in this offseason to really help their football team immensely in the 2013 season. However, they're not finished yet. There's reports that they're still looking to fill that right tackle void that they have. Again, remember, Jake Long signed with St. Louis. He was their left tackle. So they took their right tackle, Jonathan Martin, slid him over to the left side. He was their second-round pick out of Stanford a season ago, played really well on the right side. Now they're ready to make the switch to the left side. So now they slide him over. Now you have a void at right tackle. Well, now the Dolphins are looking to talk to Eric Winston to fill that void. And so Eric Winston has a few suitors. San Diego is still hot on the case. So are the Eagles. And now the Dolphins are in the fray. So there are some teams out there vying for the services of Eric Winston. And don't forget, Sebastian Vollmer is out there as well. And so someone's going to get their hands on Eric Winston. The Dolphins are very interested. They're also reportedly interested in O.C. Umenyor. And so he's got a few suitors for his services as well. And so we'll see what happens. Do the Dolphins get their hands on another free agent that can come in and possibly help them turn this thing around in the 2013 season? We will see. It's also been reported that Ed Reed is looking for $7 million a year. And in case you haven't been paying attention, there's not a lot of players this year in the secondary commanding that type of money. You look at the cornerback market, not a lot of guys commanding big free agent dollars. So it's going to be hard for a guy like Ed Reed, who's getting up there in age. He's still a playmaker, still has a lot left in the tank. It's going to be hard, though, for him to go up to a team and say, hey, I want a 3-year, $21 million deal. That's 7 per. It's a lot of money to be paying for a guy that you might get 2 solid seasons out of. I don't know. I don't know if any team is going to be willing to pony up those type of dollars. And right now, there seems to be 2 bidders. the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans. Ed Reed's going to have to decide who's offering the better deal, pick one, and play out the rest of his career in that franchise. So we're going to see if he's going to decide home is where the heart is, or it's time for me to chase those dollars. And so we'll see what happens, who has the more lucrative offer, and who sells Ed Reed on the potential of winning in conjunction with the right amount of money. Because again, Ed Reed wants his dollars to make sense at this point of his career. He just got the Super Bowl championship now. So now the dollars need to make sense. And so we'll see what team's dollars make the most sense for Ed Reed. And that's essentially going to do it. That's a touchdown. Go ahead and tack on this quick extra point. So stay tuned to the Lab Room for all the different shows that are going to be coming up here shortly. Again, have a lot of these weekend review free agent market videos being released. So keep your eyes peeled for those. And also, I'm starting to turn my attention to the draft, as that is going to be upon us here shortly. And so I'll be starting to talk about the draft here a lot more than I was in the past, because now it's becoming a lot clearer what teams' needs are going to be. All of a sudden now you came into the offseason needing a number one receiver. Well, you left free agency with a number one receiver in your cart when you left the market. So all of a sudden now you don't need a number one receiver. Now you can move on to a different need. And that's why I don't like focusing on the draft until after free agency has taken place. Now that free agency is well underway and we're starting to get into the later stages, now I can start turning my attention to the draft, because for the most part, teams have already made their most significant moves. And so, yeah, there's still going to be a lot of little moves made, but the big splashes, the big free agent signings are done for the most part. And so now you're looking to fill out your roster with guys that can come in and help you in a smaller capacity. You're not looking for the guy that's going to start at left tackle. You're not looking for the guy that's going to start at wide receiver. Now, look, there are some big name free agents still out there. Ed Reed, Sebastian Vollmer, Eric Winston, guys like that are still out on the market. But for the most part, all the big fish have already been caught. And so now you know what teams are going to need. So now you can start looking at the draft and trying to project who's going to take this player at where. And so I'll be doing my homework very vigorously, trying to figure out what this draft is going to look like, how it's going to shape up, who's going to go where, who can help who, and what's going to occur. And so I thank you for joining me here in the Lab Room. You know all the ways to contact the show. There's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's Twitter, there's the inbox. All of it is in the Lab Room predicated. You want Facebook? In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. Like me on Facebook. You want Twitter? At In the Lab Room is the Twitter handle. Follow me on Twitter. You want the YouTube page? Louis T is the page. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you want the inbox, In the Lab Room at gmail.com is the inbox. Thank you for joining me here on this Wednesday in the Lab Room. Got to a lot today. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So, want to see you back here, same time, same place. And as always, have a good one. Take care. Adios. A mañana.